Vice Chancellor, Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor, Deans of Schools, distinguished guests, faculty members, staff and students. A very warm welcome to the 29th Foundation Day celebrations of Tezpur University. Following tradition, may I, at the outset, request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Vinod Kumar Jain, to hoist the university flag, which will be followed by the rendering of the university anthem.
Tezpur বিশ্ববিদ্যালয় Tezpur বিশ্ববিদ্যালয় পূর্ণর ঘর ভরা নবনন খন্দর গণনার কর বিচরণ বিজ্ঞান জোয়ারর অগ্রগতি আহুতিরে করু রূপায়ণ আয়ত্ত করি মহাকুখর করি যাও দিক নির্ণয় মানবতা মানব জনপ্রতি Tezpur বিশ্ববিদ্যালয় Tezpur বিশ্ববিদ্যালয় মরুল বই যায় কাকে নিয়ে আমার এই ভক্তির উচ্চারণ দুটি পার রূপান্তর বিজ্ঞাপনীরে প্রযুক্তি বিদ্যায় বই নির্ভয় জীবন জুড়য় বিজ্ঞান ভারতী Tezpur বিশ্ববিদ্যালয় Tezpur বিশ্ববিদ্যালয় Tezpur বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়
At the outset, may I request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Vinod Kumar Jain, to felicitate our chief guest for the day, Professor T.G. Sitaram. I would also like to request our Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor Dhruva Kumar Bhattacharya, to felicitate our guest of honor, Professor B.M. Ajayan. Thank you, sir. I now request Dr. Mandakini Borwa to felicitate Madam Anuradha Sitaram and Madam Purnima Ajay on behalf of the organizing committee. Thank you. May I now request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Vinod Kumar Jain, to deliver the welcome address.
Honorable Chief Guest of the 29th Foundation Day celebrations, Professor T.G. Sitaram ji, Mrs. Sitaram, Professor P. Ajayan from Rice University, and Madam Mrs. Ajayan, my dear friend Dr. Kamboj from Defense Research Laboratory, my colleague in the administration, Professor D.K. Bhattacharya, my erstwhile colleague esteemed deans, faculty members, staff, officers of the university, dear students and friends from the media. A very good morning to each one of you, and it's such a privilege and honor to welcome you all for this 29th Foundation Day celebrations today. University was established way back in 1994 on this day, and we have traversed a long academic journey with some very notable achievements. The university began with a very modest academic programs. Only 3 departments existed then, and today we have 26 departments under 4 schools: School of Management, Humanities and Social Sciences, Sciences and Engineering. Some 4,400 students on roles, 270 plus faculty as of now, some 280 plus non-teaching staff, and some very fine officers of the university. May I, for the benefit of some of you, also mention some very notable achievements to the credit of the university. During the last 5 years, we have had some 2,300 plus publications, research publications, with some 16,000 citations. H index during the last 5 years has been around 45, and the cumulative H index is 89 for the university. And as of now, some 320 extramural research projects are running on the campus. And the university has been able to generate close to 95 or 96 crores worth of funding since inception. The university has a very vibrant research and innovation ecosystem, and that is also reflected in some notable achievements on the part of the faculty and the students. Please allow me just to mention a few. In 2017-18, 2 of our faculty members got the Visitors Award for the best researcher in the country. And then last year, we had 1 professor from physics who got the award for the technology and development. In addition, our students have also brought laurels to the university. Under the Gandhian Young Innovation Award, there were awardees in the year 2017, 18, 19 for 3 consecutive years. We missed out in 2020, but again this year our students have done us proud. So it just goes on to show that the university has been doing fairly well over the years. And we are very optimistic about its future growth. But the challenge before us is to maintain the serious reputation which the university has earned in the country, and in fact we are looked upon by the academic fraternity in the country and the public at large as an institution to go to. So with this reputation, we need to build on this reputation, and I seek the cooperation of everyone, the faculty, the students, the staff, and all the well-wishers of this university to take this journey with these few words, I close my remarks and would like to greet you all on this very auspicious occasion for the university. I look forward to listening to Professor Ajayan, who is the guest of honor, and at a very short notice, we agreed to be part of the celebration. So thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And Professor Sitaraman, I couldn't thank you enough for sparing your time and coming all the way from Guwahati this morning. Thank you, Professor Sitaram. So with these words, I welcome you once again and look forward to listening to both guest of honor and chief guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce our guest of honor, Professor P.N. Ajayan, to you. Professor P.N. Ajayan is currently the Benjamin M. and Mary Greenwood Professor of Engineering at Rice University. As eclectic as his field of research, he is also affiliated with the Department of Chemistry, Chemical and Biomolecular Engineering, and Material Science and Nanoengineering, where he is the founding chair as well. Professor Ajayan had pursued a B.Tech degree in Metallurgical Engineering from IIT, BHU Varanasi, and received his PhD in Material Science and Engineering from Northwestern University. He has had a rich postdoctoral experience as well, including as a researcher at the Max Planck Institute for Metals Research, Germany. His list of scientific achievements is truly remarkable, making him a pioneer as well as a promoter of nanotechnology in today's era. While working at the NEC Fundamental Research Lab in Japan, he played an active part in publishing the maiden papers on the revolutionary carbon nanotubes. His present area is broad and multidisciplinary, including 2D materials, optical electrical devices, and applications of nanomaterials for energy storage, bioimaging, water purification, etc. Professor Ajayan has been conferred with almost all the coveted titles of material science, and he is a fellow of many science academies, including Royal Society of Chemistry and National Academy of Sciences. He also has been conferred with honorary doctorate from various international universities. Professor Ajayan has provided research guidance to a large number of senior scientists and researchers across the globe. He is a pioneer of carbon nanotube, a 2 times achiever of Guinness World Record in nanotechnology, and listed among the world's most cited material scientists. It gives me great pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome Professor Ajayan and request him to deliver the audience. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm waiting for my slides to appear. But before that, let me thank you for having me here. Honorable Vice Chancellor Dr. Professor Jain, Honorable Guest of Honor, Professor Sitaram, distinguished visitors and friends and students. I didn't know it was a foundation day today. I just happened to be here, and I'm very happy to be part of this occasion. I've heard of Tezpur University when Professor Preetham Dev visited Rice University a few years ago. And at that point, I was sure that I'd visit here one day. And the more I see, the more I'm impressed with what you have done. And I want to congratulate you on this 29th Foundation Day occasion. And I hope this place will remain as a jewel of the Northeast in the years to come. Of course, sustaining excellence is a challenging thing. And as Professor Jain mentioned, it has to come from every constituency in a university. And today I thought that I'll talk a little bit about this whole idea of having excellence in academia, given my own background and journey through the area of nanotechnology and material science. So, you realize that the reason why we were able to do many things is because of technology. We were able to conduct our classes online. We were able to do calls and continue our research programs because of what technology has been to us. So let me talk about this whole idea of not just creating excellence, but also sustaining excellence in academia. So next slide, please. And I come from Rice University. Again, it's a good example of what excellence is. Although we are a very small university compared to US standards, about 6,000 students, we are ranked as the top 16 in the country. That the numbers really doesn't matter from that perspective. Even though you're small, you can be really outstanding. And this is again an example here. Tezpur University is reasonably small. That's what I hear. But we have created an environment of excellence, which I hope will continue. Next slide. So when I think about universities, and think about what universities stand for, the quote from Tagore certainly comes to my mind. In Gitanjali, he says, "Where the mind is free, and there are no constraints, restrictions on how we can think and how we can interact, freely with other people." I think this is where the power of academics come from. Right? We are foundational in many things. Even the technologies we see today resulted in innovative ideas and important thought processes that happened many years ago. So, I still believe that academic environment is ripe for really fundamental research, foundational contributions that should not die, because I think that is the life of excellence and long-term technological prominence. So I hope universities really will cater to the idea that basic sciences and basic research is what ultimately will be beneficial for humanity and society. Next slide. So the question, I was asking myself, actually this is a talk, part of a talk that I delivered in Hyderabad recently, more from a motivational point of view. What can be done, or what is the real history where excellence is created in universities? And it's very clear, if you go back to many discoveries and many innovations in technology, that it all originated somewhere. There are these seminal ideas that somebody comes up with. And again, the environment, the free environment that universities have is conducive to creating these type of seminal ideas. I always tell my students that think out of the box. Creativity is what academic environment can produce. And of course, you need motivation. Motivation is very important because many times research being a long-term process, you can actually go into the valleys of excitement. And you have to constantly remind yourself that one discovery can really change the world. And so with seminal ideas should also come motivation, and then there can be significantly exciting discoveries that happen. If you imagine the times just around the World War time, the quantum mechanics and all the amazing discoveries that came out of quantum mechanics, we still are here because of those discoveries. The way we can manipulate electrons and photons, those are all foundational back to the point where the quantum mechanics is created. So I think these ideas are very important, and universities and academic environment is perfect for creating those novel ideas and essentially the discoveries that ultimately will become realities and technological importance. So in addition to this basic research and foundational discoveries, you also have the applied part of things. And I will mention a little bit later, but I think today's world, it's also very important for us to think that some of these basic discoveries can be translated at some point into practical things. And I think that thinking should be in the back of our mind, but that should not really cloud the idea that fundamental research is important for us. I think that is the foundational thing. So in academics, again, we cannot pretend that we can build technologies right away. Things have a long span from the beginning of discoveries to innovations to finally creating practical things. So I think this combination of ideas and translation is very important for our own national securities and prominence and important technologies that will develop. Next slide. So this is what I mentioned, today's world, as I said, translational research has become very important. But translation research is very tricky, especially looking from an academic point of view, because the discoveries that we make in our labs, they have to mature, they have to be validated, they have to be demonstrated by multiple places, and then slowly it has to be picked up by people who can commercialize, who can support in terms of resources. So many times, many of the ideas go through this valley of death, as they call it, because there is a certain amount of time during which you can sustain fundamental research in terms of funding and resources. But then at the right point of time, it has to be picked up by other sources who can actually take it and translate it into applications and technology. And many times, this doesn't really come close together, and you fall into the valley of death and many ideas disappear. So in the US, for example, there are many mechanisms like the small business initiatives and so on. And a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people who wants to believe and fund research that can be taken to the next level. So that ecosystem has to be created. Otherwise, there is a big chance that many of the ideas that we create fall into this valley of death. So that's again things that we realize, we have experience in. But in some cases, you're lucky enough to actually have this confluence, and some of the ideas obviously get translated into big technologies. Next slide. And if I look at material science and nanotechnology, which is my area of research, amazing things are happening. The point that you can actually edit your genes, the fact that you can actually create devices that are less than 10 nanometers in size, and essentially build millions of them onto a small platform on your chip. It's unbelievable. The last 10, 20 years or a couple of decades, I've seen incredible amount of creativity and tour de force in terms of technology development. Whether it is a top-down approach or bottom-up approach, people are now coming together to be able to manipulate atoms and manipulate molecules at that scale, and the result will be phenomenal. Right? People talk about quantum materials, quantum technologies. Essentially, it's manipulating single atoms and so on. Next slide. So, nanotechnology in general, one can say that it's manipulating things at the real atomic scale. That's a frontier. You're talking about single atoms or single, manipulating single electrons, clusters, two-dimensional materials, nanotubes. So these are all, the ingenious creations of human mind. And not only that we've come up with these ideas, but we've also been able to put it to practice at some point in time. So, we live through a remarkable time in terms of technology. I think I should really be happy, and anybody who is doing science and technology should be really happy to be in this field, because, this is what is changing the world. Nothing else. It is the fundamental breakthroughs in science. It is the technological development that is actually changing the world. Any other thought is just out of place, because clearly, this is the thing that has really had the biggest impact in our lives. Next slide. So, I just will give you a few examples of some of the things that I have seen in my career and lifetime. So I started my PhD with looking at the structural stabilities of particles, small particles. And of course, when things are small, things are different. The fundamental physical properties change when we go down to smaller and smaller sizes. And in the early 1990s, when I did my PhD, the word nano was not even really very commonplace. So my PhD essentially was about small particles, not nanoparticles. So, and after realizing the power of small, people started to invest hugely in this area. Whether it is a big nano fund in the United States or the nano mission in India, enormous amount of resources were poured in so that people can come together, build groups, have larger emphasis on these kind of technologies, and nanotechnology became really very popular. So that was kind of my beginning in terms of looking at nano. Next slide. And just to kind of, I'm sure everybody knows, nano is really very, very small. It's 100,000 of the size of your hair, a single strand of hair. Right? And now you can see even the semiconductor industry is looking at things that are less than 7 nanometers. So, just imagine how you can create very periodic, very organized structures that are that small in millions of repeated structures, and how all those things will communicate with each other to build the kind of performances, computing, things like that you're seeing in the computers. So this is a remarkable story in terms of being able to really control things at that scale. Next slide. And there are many, many examples where people have been excited for a very, very long time. Even Richard Feynman was fascinated by the idea that when you are able to control matter at that scale, what kind of things you can do. Obviously, that when he was alive, people were interested in quantum mechanics, but were not able to manipulate things with that kind of control. So I think nanotechnology obviously has been part of the imagination of many various people, and rightly so. Next slide. And nature has also been playing around with nanotechnology. This is a great example of a material that is super tough. If you try to break a conch shell or a shell that you can find on the beach, it's super difficult. But 99% of this material essentially is the same material that the chalk is made of, right? Calcium carbonate, which is so easy to break. So the trick that nature has been playing around with is taking these, breaking it down to nanoscale, and packaging it with the right kind of interfaces. So ultimately, if I try to break this, the cracks doesn't really propagate very easily, and it kind of gets reflected. There's a lot of energy that is consumed. So ultimately, it becomes a super, super tough material. So this is something, like an example, a model that you can emulate, right? Nature has done a lot of nanoengineering, and how can we understand this? How can we recreate this? So that's been part of the nanoengineering paradigm. Next slide. And in terms of the actual practicality, you can see that there is going to be a divergence in terms of applications of nanotechnology. It's become more of an enabling technology. It is becoming part of almost every possible technology that you can think of. And even in terms of the market share and so on, people propose that nanotechnology is going to have a huge impact. Next slide. And this is an interesting set of articles that Nature journal, which is #1 journal in the world in terms of basic sciences, published the foundational 10 papers that Nature has published in the last 20-30 years, which has become the basic for lots of good technologies. And among these 10, and it includes, for example, the discovery of the DNA, the exoplanets, the porous materials. And there are many amazing technologies that these 10 papers categorize. But one of those papers that they mentioned was the discovery of the carbon nanomaterials, fullerenes. This is important for us, for me personally, because this is where my career started. And I'll give you a couple of examples of how this discovery of fullerenes came about. So next slide. So this was again one of the things that Rice University became famous for. The Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1996 went to the discovery of fullerenes. And what is a fullerene? It's an interesting material with a very interesting name. Basically it's a carbon 60 atom carbon that is formed in a beautiful high symmetric structure, the icosahedral. And it was discovered in some sense serendipitously. People were trying to ablate carbon and look for the many different structures that are formed in a vapor that contains carbon particles. And even in the early 80s, people found that if I look at the mass spectrum, there are very, very strong peaks at 60 atom carbon. So it was very well understood from spectroscopy that if 60 atom carbon come together, it can become a very stable structure. But the actual structure of C60 is what earned the Nobel Prize. So it was not the people who first found that there are these strong peaks in 60 atom carbon position, but it was the people who figured out what the structure of this carbon was. And very interestingly, this particular structure, this 60 atom carbon structure, was exactly the structure of the soccer ball that people used before. Not the new designs of the soccer ball, but the old design. It had exactly 20 hexagons and pentagons. So the structure was right in front of you, but people didn't connect. The reason why I'm giving you this example is how discoveries are made. Right? I mean, right in front of you, there was a soccer ball, right? And this structure was well known. And the point where they didn't really connect, or most people didn't connect, was how can this nanoscale 60 atom carbon have the structure of this big soccer ball? See, this is precisely what discovery is about. And obviously, the Nobel Prize went to those people who made that connection. So, for students particularly, it's all about making connections. You might be seeing something in your daily experiment, but you may not connect. And to have that connection, you have to have this open mind. Right? And as Tagore said, when the mind is free, that is the way you should be thinking. Every moment in your research that you do, you should be excited. Recently one of my students asked me, can I ask you, Professor, a question? I said, fine, go ahead. So whatever questions you have, please ask me. She asked me, do you actually ever dream about your research? So that was an interesting question, And when I think back, I said, if I think about it, I was dreaming all the time. Right? I mean, things that I did in my lab, I was actually dreaming when I was sleeping. So that connection, that close encounter with your mind is important for you to be successful. And I can tell you, this basic science and scientific research job is one of the best you can ever have. Because you constantly think, you're constantly solving puzzles. It's a job that you're paid to do, but it's so beautiful to do, right? So exciting to do. Next slide. So again, this carbon nanotube, this fluorine discovery led to discovery of carbon nanotube and graphene, and already there are 2 Nobel Prizes given to the discovery of these materials. And nanotube probably is something in the future that might actually get such recognition. But it has had enormous impact in material science research. And one thing I also forgot to mention is this name fullerene. Why is carbon-60 called fullerene? It's again the fantastic thing about research, that you have all these interdisciplinary things. There was this architect whose name was Buckminster Fuller, and he was making these geodesic domes that had structures that are very similar to this C60 structure, the soccer ball structure, right? So people, when they realized that this C60 has a structure of a soccer ball, they also found that the architect was proposing the idea that the structure of buildings could be very stable if you have the icosahedral structure. So somehow his name got drawn into this, and the C60 started to be called as fullerenes. So Buckminster Fuller had nothing to do with the discovery of C60, but his name got dragged into this, and he's become more famous than in his own field because of the similarity. So research works in that way. We are connected in many ways, and globally connected. Right? Whether you are an architect doing something, or whether you are a nanoscientist, there are connections, and that's what is very interesting. Next slide. Again, you can click a few slides. These are all early papers that we were involved in generating the first nanotubes and looking at the structure and what kind of interesting things that can happen. And the strong correlation between structure and properties is becoming very important in nanoscale. And the first 2 decades of nanotechnology was dedicated to understanding these connections between structure and properties. Next slide. Beautiful structure of carbon nanotube. One of the early creative works that we did in terms of filling the nanotubes and so on. So this has become such a big field now. Again, when I started, the first papers on a topic is always fascinating because you don't know how this will go, but ultimately, if the discovery is foundational, it will have lots of takers. It will really become big thing in the future. Next slide. You can skip the slide. So, in my introduction, I mentioned that we had 2 Guinness Book of World Records. And again, when you're working at the frontier of technologies, your mind can go in multiple ways. So there were two instances where we were able to create structures that went into the Guinness Book of World Record. One was this particular structure, which was the smallest brush anybody had made. Next slide. This was another one where we were able to create these arrays of nanotubes which absorbs enormous amount of light. So one could consider this as the darkest material that anybody can make. So again, as you are going towards sophisticated nanoscale materials, you have much more flexibility to create materials. And again, think about this, right? Most of the time when we make devices, we do the top-down approach. You're machining things, you're creating shapes. But imagine you can build this bottom-up. Every atom you start to play around and build things. You have much more flexibility. And it's a very different paradigm. And this is what is happening today in nanotechnology as well. This transition from bottom-up technologies to top-down to bottom-up technology will be a major thing in the future. Next slide. And you need to be visionary, right? You need to have people who are leaders and visionaries in this area. Richard Smalley, who was one of the Nobel Prize winners, always used to just imagine. Of course, if you are a Nobel Prize winner, whatever you say will be taken, with much more value than anybody talking about things. And he would say things like this. I would like to make a huge fiber nanotube and go fishing with it. That statement looks pretty simple, but it's not very simple when it actually translates into practicality. When you put nanotubes together, lots of the intrinsic properties of the building blocks change because of the interface to run properly. And end of the day, it took almost 10 years to be able to make continuous fibers from nanotubes. That's my colleague, Professor Tezpur at Rice University, who has been spinning nanotubes into long fibers and continuous fibers. So this is again what I was saying, basic science to practice takes a very long time, and you need to be patient, and there are many, many examples, whether it's silicon technology, whether it's lithium-ion batteries, it takes 20, 30 years before it actually becomes a forceful, practical product or technology. So that's very important to realize. That's like, and again, nanotechnology is also, you can think about it as a Lego game. You have all these tiny, tiny pieces of structures, atomic scale clusters that you try to put together. And when you put these things together, something amazing happens. If you put it in the right way, right? So the entire materials community working in that area is focused on trying to controllably build these architectures from nanoscale building blocks. Next slide. Again, a different perspective on how you can build different types of building blocks. Next slide. Let's move on. And again, there are many, many examples. This is an example of graphene, which is another material that received the Nobel Prize. How you can put it together into three-dimensional structures and large-scale objects that has very specific properties. One of the materials here gave a very large range of thermoelasticity. Materials that can be elastic at very low temperature, materials that is elastic at very high temperature. And it's only because you have the right kind of building blocks and the right kind of engineering that you can build these architectures, structures that really is out of the world. That's right. 3D printing is another area where we are trying to build bottom-up architectures, again, layer by layer assembly. And you're going to see in your lifetime, things that are printed out of scale. Right? People are printing homes. The entire homes just printed, right? Bridges that are printed. I'm sure that there will be, all kinds of things that are simply printed, bottom up. So I think, there is this fundamental research, innovation, translation, and then adaptation, right? I think the adaptation becomes very commonplace, like electronics, mobile devices, 3D printing in the future, CRISPR technologies for gene editing. These are all examples where the whole journey has taken place, right? All the way from foundational research to discoveries to translation and application. Next slide. Again, another example of this three-dimensional structure, composites. Again, composites going to revolutionize transportation, aerospace, things like that. Next slide. This was again a very creative thing that we did, and it kind of relates to things like self-healing materials or self-strengthening materials. Biology is very interesting. Biology has structures that are very complex, and it provides very, very interesting attributes that we cannot really play around today. For example, the bone. Bone is an interesting material because it actually strengthens as you load, right? Self-strengthening kind of material. And part of it is metabolic, but part of it is actually design of structures. So we were thinking of designing structures with the right kind of interfaces that during loading and practice could actually strengthen rather than weaken. So there are many, many ideas like that in nature. Self-cleaning, you must have heard of this lotus effect, right? The lotus leaves looks very, very clean all the time because of the surface design. It's a materials design problem, right? So can we create structures like that? And sensors. Sensors is going to be ubiquitous. Everywhere in the world, we have multiple sensors that are interacting, and that's why people call it Internet of Things. Things that are connected, right? So the world is going to be much more responsive. Next slide. And of course, with all these, you need to also have resources and instrumentation that actually can allow you to look at materials at very small scale, understand the structure property correlations. So some of these instrumentation is very expensive. So you need to have people coming together, have central facilities that allows us to do experiments. Collaboration becomes an important part of research today. Right? So next slide. A beautiful experiment that we did many years ago, but it needed a 1 million volt electron microscope. A microscope that was taller than two of such buildings. Right? So very expensive, but again, you don't need many of these instruments. If people can come together, if institutions and universities can come together and create centers of excellence, have facilities that anybody can use. This is all part of this open mind and thinking, where we need to work together. So scientists don't do things by themselves. We build on what other people have done. We work together and do things together. And this is a message that I really want to give, that we have to come together and work together. I never feel that I have contributed by myself, but I have to feel that I've contributed because others have contributed before me, and I build on what others have done, right? I said quantum mechanics, foundational. A lot of people have worked, again, to build on what they have done. Next slide, you can move on. Next slide. So, again, I won't take too much more time, just a couple of more minutes. This is another great example. The discovery and the translation of lithium-ion batteries. Today we talk about the electric mobility revolution, EV revolution. Every country is promising that half their transportation will be electric, right? And where did it all come from? So if you go back and see the history of lithium-ion batteries, it started in the 70s. Stan Whittingham was the first one to imagine that you could actually use metals and create electrochemical storage devices. And since then, there were so many different steps and discoveries that ultimately made it to commercialization. So it started in the 1970s, and it was only in the 90s that the first commercial battery came out by Sony. Right? So the three people who got the Nobel Prize in this, Stan Whittingham, Goodenow, and the Japanese scientist Yoshino, they all had a part to play, but it all spread across a span of 30 years. Right? And even in the 90s it was commercialized, but it's only now that it's actually getting into adaptation mode. Right? So I think one thing that is very important for us to realize, it's important to build practical things, but you cannot forget the early stages that lead to these. Right? The foundational aspect of basic research is extremely important, and that's my message today. If there was this one message that I need to give. And this is just an example of how materials develop also with lithium-ion batteries and how it is continuing to develop. Next slide. So this is my last slide. Essentially, I look at this whole ecosystem as a tetrahedron. Again, depending on additional points, you can actually make other types of polyhedrons. But tetrahedron is actually an interesting polyhedron with 6 edges, 4 corners, and 4 faces. Right? And to me, these points that I mentioned, ideation, knowledge, innovation, creativity, pedagogy, translation, and societal impact form the edges of this ecosystem. Right? And the collaboration, interdisciplinarity, outreach, and funding forms the edges, because without these, we cannot hold these, the faces, because these edges cannot be put together without these facets. And then, of course, the corners are important. Important to have facilities, important to have human resources, people, students, professors who work together, and leadership. I think in all of these, leadership is important, because many of the things that we do needs to have a blessing from the top, and I think it's important to realize that leadership really plays a key role. And I've seen this happen in many cases, that in some without the proper leadership, things can fall apart very quickly. And incentives. I think incentivization of what we do is important. It could be a simple pat on the back. It could be, a media outlet to, put out a publication, or it could be an award, a scholarship, or whatever. Right? I think we all do things, but incentivization is important to keep us motivated long term. I think the last slide. So I wanted to kind of stop here, saying that the gentle way can shape the world, and I think we are all doing this gentle movement, and I think the collective power of this gentle movement is what we really need to the benefits of. I've been in this academic business for almost 30 years now, and there's not a single moment that I don't realize that what I'm doing is actually enabled by what people have done over years and years, right? And that is important, right? So keep motivated, focused, get excited for what you do, and be aware that science and technology is what that has really changed our lives. And it will continue to do so for many, many years to come. And I'm sure Tezpur University will have a key role to play in this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your very informative speech. We hope it was enlightening for the audience. Thank you once again. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce our chief guest, Professor T.G. Sitaram, to you. Professor T.G. Sitaram is the director of the Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati, Assam, since July 2019. He also holds the position of Director, Additional Charge at the Central Institute of Technology, Kokrajhar, Assam. He is a senior professor in the Department of Civil Engineering, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, and has served the institution for the last 27 years. As the director of IIT Guwahati, he was responsible for creating 5 new schools and 5 new academic centers during 2020-2021. During his tenure, IIT Guwahati has achieved the 2nd rank in citation per faculty in India in the recent QS World Ranking 2022. The institute had a significant jump of 95 ranks from 2019 to 395th rank globally in 2022. In the NIRF ranking, IIT Guwahati ranked 8th in engineering in 2021. Professor Sitaram has created a new industry interaction and special initiative group at IITG and has attracted 22 companies at Research Park and has incubated a large number of startups in the Technology Incubation Center of IITG. In 2020-2021, IITG has transferred about 20 technologies to industries during this global pandemic. Professor Sitaram is a member of Science and Engineering Research Board, Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. He was the former chairman, Research Council, CSIR, CBIR, Roorkee. Presently, he is the president of the Indian Society for Earthquake Technology an international association for coastal reservoir research. He has published 500 technical papers, 20 books with Google Scholar H index of 47, and 1 to 10 index 137 with more than 7,200 citations. He was listed in the world's top 2% of scientists for the most cited research scientist in various disciplines by Stanford University in 2020 and again in 2021. He has gained 40 PhD students, guided 35 master's students and 25 postdoctoral students, and several thousand industry professionals and teachers through continuing education workshops. He has filed for 5 patents and executed more than 120 consulting projects. He also has 2 startup companies to his credit. He is the Fellow of American Society of Civil Engineers, Fellow of Institution of Civil Engineers, Diplomat of Geotechnical Engineering from Academy of Geoprofessionals, ASCE, Fellow of IGS, ISET, ISES, and many other societies in India and abroad. He is also a certified professional engineer and chartered engineer from IE. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to request Professor T.G. Sitaram to deliver the 29th Foundation Day oration of Tezpur University. The title of his speech is National Education Policy 2020, Heralding New Era in Higher Education, Building Resilient Universities for Tomorrow. Sir.
Namaste to everyone. Very good morning to all of you. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Vinod Kumar Jain, and all the other dignitaries, faculty members, officers, and staff of Tezpur University, invited dignitaries, guests, students, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me congratulate to all that who have involved and responsible for making Tezpur University on this day, which has completed 28 years and stepping into 29th foundation day of Tezpur University where we are assembled. I am very happy and privileged to be here at Tezpur University to deliver the 29th Foundation Day oration of your university. This is my first visit to your university. And it gives me an immense pleasure to be here and also to know that IIT Guwahati and Tezpur University are almost siblings. Maybe IIT Guwahati started 9 months later. It was September 1st, we have started in 1994. You have little earlier. So let me congratulate Tezpur University Vice Chancellor, all administrators, faculty, staff, research scholars, students for completing 28 successful years of existence. And your contribution is very immense. I went through your website and know about the accomplishments what you have done. And your contribution to the growth of Northeast is incredible. Because I could see you were listed actually as an Institute of Eminence, but somehow the last minute it was dropped. It is great to be here, friends. I'm also pleased to hear that Tezpur University is trying to leap forward by embracing rising standards and also the new demands of the new and transdisciplinary areas of research and technology development by also incorporating the new National Education Policy 2020 principles, policies, including industrial interactions and participation in offering courses in futuristic areas, providing thrust to startup culture, entrepreneurship at all levels, and creation of jobs in the Northeast. Today, I have chosen to talk to you, even though, as I told, I am a civil engineer by profession, and I spent my 27 years at the University of Science, Bangalore. Before that, graduated from University of Waterloo in Canada, then served at University of Texas for 4 years at Austin, Texas. Then moved to University of Science in 1994. Since then, I am a professor there. Today, I am going to talk to you on the national education policy, heralding new era in higher education. The national education policy in EP 2020, which was approved by the Union Cabinet of India on 29th of July 2020, outlines the visions of India's new education system. The new policy replaces its previous national policy in education, which was actually developed in 1986. The policy is a very comprehensive framework. I think all of you are very distinguished faculty, professors who have gone through the policy. I'm not going to spend much time on what is there in that. Starting from changing the name of the Ministry of Human Resources and Development to the Ministry of Education, a lot of positive things are being enlisted. The new education policy is about building a character and creating a holistic and well-rounded individuals equipped with the key 21st century skills. And we have heard Professor Ajayan just before this. It was a phenomenal talk on new material science, which has entered into every discipline, you name it, including civil engineering. He talked about 3D printing. We started doing at IIT Guwahati underwater 3D printing, looking at the structures to create new structures in underwater using new materials. The whole idea of the national education policy is the curriculum content maybe little reduced in each subject to its core essentials and make space for critical thinking and more holistic, inquiry-based, discovery-based, discussion-based, what Professor Ajay was talking about through examples. It's all actually brought out beautifully in the national education policy. Teaching and learning will be conducted in a more interactive fashion. The new education policy has envisaged some far-reaching changes to catapult the education in India into the 21st century. What is now important for us, all of us, is the aspirations articulated in National Education Policy 2020, whether we will be able to match with the implementation. Considering the current education scenario, I think all of us will agree that it should be a daunting task and would be a very challenging one. But if properly this NEP 2020 is implemented with seriousness, the ambitious targets can definitely be met. Next slide, please. Can I control the slides myself? Can I control the slides? Slide changer is there? Slide changer is there? Slide changer, automatic changer is there? Yeah, plus 1 or 2. Thank you. The disruptive innovation and digital and communication technologies, and even the material technologies, what Professor Ajay talked about, offers India a natural advantage to take leadership in the education sector. Because we have the youngest population in the world. Okay? Half of our population is less than 35. There is a robust demand with 500 million young population between 5 to 24 years as well in education sector. In India, parents are aspiring their kids to get into IIT from the age of 6, which is not an exaggeration at all. India has a competitive advantage having higher education mostly taught through English medium. Today we are also having a very strong policy and political support as never before, with proactive initiative of Ministry of Education, All India Council for Technical Education, and also the UGC, maybe which all be transformed in a short while to an higher education council. Furthermore, there are many programs, you can see some of them, both of the government as well as the Ministry of Education. Okay. Government Startup India, as well as Make in India programs, as well as the NPI, UPMR, Swayam, Tezpur, all these programs to enhance the quality in higher education, which is, some of them have really remarkably contributed in their own way. With such an ecosystem in place today, as per the World Bank report, Indian higher education system is third largest in the world, next to the United States and China. Many countries worldwide are looking for solutions, capabilities, guidance to embrace disruptive innovation. See, what we achieved in the 90s, 80s and 90s through IT revolution, I think India is poised to do that through education disruption. If you implement this properly in a very right spirit, we would be definitely the leaders in the education in the world. I talked about the IITs, because I come from Indian Institute of Technology. In the 80s and 90s, Indian Institute of Technology was basically an engineering college. But today, IITs have a tremendous role to play as a partner of a new knowledge economy to inspire, create, and move our society forward. This National Education Policy 2020 will drive the knowledge economy to inspire, create, and move society forward as well. So I'm going to talk to you today on how Indian institutions have created their own niche in the education sector. IIT Guwahati, which was actually a sibling to Tezpur University, slightly younger one. Today we have about 7,000 students, plus 7,000 plus students, 450 faculty. And houses more than 10,000 residents in the campus, which has made its own mark, not only in the Northeast, in the entire country, and also the world. I would like to highlight that in the citation per faculty in the QS World Ranking 2022, IIT Guwahati is ranked number 2 university in India with more than 2,000 publications in 2021. And number 41 university globally, competing with universities like Stanford and Harvard and MIT. Because if you look at the citation per faculty, which is a more quantifiable one, Indian Institute of Science is number 1, which has 100 out of 100 marks, and it comes in the number 9 in the serial of the top universities. And IIT Guwahati is number 41 with 94 marks. But there is a long way for us to reach to the top. With 450 faculty members, with 17,000 and odd articles collated more than 220,000 citations as on August 2021. IIT Guwahati has really put a mark on research publications. This has made our Indian Institute of Technology Guwahati to bring the best minds together to find new ways forward. When I joined in 2019, I came up with a quote. Indian Institute of Technology Guwahati should think about moving from a tower of excellence to a network of excellence. We started tying up with all the universities in the Northeast, particularly because we would like to be working with everyone. So some of those efforts I would like to maybe show through my presentation today, what we have done and what we have created. From 1980s and 90s, with IITs being an engineering college, has moved, even though it is today, is really a brand all over the world. Because if you look at the last year, unicorns, number of unicorns started, majority of them from IITs. Okay. And India is also third largest unicorn creator in the world. And among them, if you look at IITs, group of IITs have done. And even IIT Guwahati alumni have also done very well, reasonably very well in terms of startups, new startups and new companies which have been created. Next slide, please. This national education policy is trying to bring the multidisciplinary abilities across the sciences, social sciences and humanities. I was telling you the IITs were started as an engineering institutions in maybe around 2009, 2010. Humanities are also being added to many of the IITs. Even IIT Guwahati also started early with humanities group. Today we have more than 35 faculty in humanities. Next slide, please. If you look at the evolution of the Indian education policy, I will not go into the details. After 34 years, in April 2020, has been introduced a comprehensive document covering all aspects of education. Next, please. A lot of consultation has also happened. I think all of you know this. Yeah. Next, please. The vision is to basically a new and forward-looking vision to develop good, well-rounded and creative individuals. So it's more focused on the individuals and bringing liberty, equality, fraternity and justice for all. What I'd like to highlight is the sustainability livelihoods leading to economic development of the nation. That's the one other aspect which is very key. As you all know, that Sustainable Development Goals of 2030, which was implemented in 2015 to 2030, we are left with about 8 years now to implement fully to alleviate poverty. We at IIT Guwahati also took that up in how do you bring the Sustainable Development Goals in contribution to improve those things. So we introduced a compulsory course for all the undergraduate in the second year on SDG goals, which has really brought in a lot of changes in the perception of among the students. 1,000 students take this course, taught by 9 different faculty from 9 different departments, which is a unique one. Okay, it talks about all, starting from alleviation of poverty to water and whatnot. All the 17 goals have been followed. I don't need to highlight to the experienced people here the gaps which exist in the Indian higher education system. So this national education policy focuses on the development of the creative potential of each individual. Both the foundational capacities of literacy and numeracy and higher order cognitive capacities such as critical thinking and problem solving It also includes the social, ethical, and emotional capacities and dispositions. That's why I said in the beginning of my remark that if you implement this policy in a right spirit, definitely we're going to be the world leaders. And this disruption, it can bring a lot of changes in the Indian ecosystem. Education. Next slide, please. The key changes in the policy: multidisciplinary universities and colleges, higher education institutions in one or in every, that is what is called as MERU, okay? And revamping the curriculum, teaching, assessment and student support, faculty and institutional autonomy, and a regulator, which is hoping to see. So by do all these, the key changes, by 2040, all higher education institutions will become multidisciplinary institutions. In that direction, at IIT Guwahati also we have done a reasonably well in the last 2 years. Before even the policy was announced, we have started a school of health sciences and technology, maybe, which has also received a huge funding from philanthropists from US. Mehta family has funded. Yesterday only we got the confirmation from the Mehta family to support the School of Health Science and Technology. And thanks to the Honorable Chief Minister of Assam, he has promised us to build a new hospital, multi-speciality hospital at IIT Guwahati, to work with the School of Health Science and Technology, which is almost, he has committed close to about 540 crores, which is a huge boost to IIT Guwahati. We have started a School of Business. In July 2020, we are going to, the first batch of students will be there. I know all those things you have it already here, except the School of Medical. So, School of Management Studies, I think you already have it here in Tezpur as well. And we have started this year our Center for Energy converted to School of Energy Science and Engineering. And we're starting an undergraduate program in energy science and engineering. And we have also converted our School of Center for Rural Technology to School of Agro-Rural Technology to focus more on agriculture. And we have started a very new School of Data Science and Artificial Intelligence. We have already taken the first batch of, they are into this end of first year now, School of Data Science and Artificial Intelligence. What we have done is in all the schools we have already hired a new faculty also. Thanks to this pandemic, we did have a lot of time, so we could interview a large number of people. Number of applications received for faculty positions also was commendable. Many of them we have received 300, 400 applications for a faculty position at IIT Guwahati, which was with all those screening and processing. Finally, we were able to select more than 50 faculty positions in different disciplines for all these schools. We do also created a new Center for Disaster Management and Research. I also noticed that you have a Center for Disaster Management at Tezpur University. Very glad to know that. And we have created a new Center for Indian Knowledge System, where we started working on some indigenous technologies, both in technical areas and science areas of contribution from the Indian knowledge system. And yesterday, in CIKS of the Ministry of Education, Ministry has also started a Center for Indian Knowledge System. They started calling for proposals and started creating a new activity around that center. Next slide. So the whole goal is to create quality universities and colleges, institutions of restructuring, multidisciplinary education, optimal learning environment and support, catalyzing quality academic research, and National Research Foundation, which is yet to be coming out for funding, which is one of the key elements of this higher education sector. Next slide. So major reforms, I don't need to go through this because many of you know this. Let me go into some of those aspects, what we have created in our IIT. Next please. One other thing is autonomy is much talked about in the academic institutions. I feel great autonomy is a very critical aspect, and empowering of faculty and with a lot of responsibilities is the key for growth and success. Without that, I think very little we can do. So all the faculty have to take the responsibility because it cannot be done by single persons. Leadership is important, but definitely is a collective effort is the key. And as Professor Ajay was telling you, working together is the very great success. Similarly, networking is also very critical. So today we can't be isolated and working. So we need to work together in a groups. I will skip some of these because to reduce the time so that I don't go on for a very long time. Because Professor Ajay has also taken half of our time, so let me include earlier so that. So my idea is, NEP 20 envisions of holistic education, and the focus is on research. Even they talk about at even school level, the inquiry-based education system would be definitely making a change if it is implemented properly. We need to understand a lot of these things, which is very well. And the other one is the credit transfer from multiple sources. And the academic credit, we are discussing heavily how to do this, how effectively we can create this, and solution for the societal problem. Finally, end of the day, all this education, which means unless we transform the lives around us, nothing really is going to be worthwhile. Next. Use of technology. I think I don't need to talk so much about this because all of us have realized this pandemic has made actually, maybe we have leapfrogged more than 2 decades, maybe. Otherwise, we would not have really changing many things. Today, all the interviews happen online. Even for the top positions, everything happens. The selection of directors happens online, vice chancellors happens online. So all these things would not have been possible if this pandemic was not there. So a lot of changes have happened due to this pandemic. And many other, I don't need to start reading this. Next slide, please. What I would like to say, just a year back, we all thought that no substitute for face-to-face teaching, learning. But today, either by force, some of us still not accepting what we are doing now online is the solution. But friends, all of us know that this is going to remain with us. It's not going to go away. Either, I'm not saying that everything is positive about it. There are some negative things about the online teaching learning, but this is going to be staying with us. So we need to innovate even there. We need to innovate there. Our classes have to become smaller duration. So we did a lot of things at IIT Guwahati during this pandemic. Our classes started becoming 20 minutes classes rather than 15 minutes classes. So many of these things have to be done because the concentration of the screen time has to be reduced. Many of these things have to be done in a that means a lot of responsibility has to be handed over to the faculty. A lot of freedom has to be given to them. And that comes with responsibility as well. All 100 people, all the faculty, we can't expect them to be functioning at the same, ethical standards and ethical, integrity and all that. So there is a lot of learning over a period of time. It's not going to happen overnight. Next. This is what Indian knowledge systems and languages and culture and values. As I told you, I was very happy to see many language departments. I was just driving through your campus, I just noticed. You have English language, Hindi, many other centers of excellence at Tezpur University as well. Next. The other key areas of focus is the professional education, adult education and lifelong learning. That's the one key aspect of it we have learned even during this pandemic. Technology use and integration, online and digital education. So earlier, IITs were never thought that we can go because we have the technological institutions. Without laboratories, nothing can be done. But today, we have started an online program already. We have created a new dean at IIT Guwahati for an online program and started it. We had actually started to think about offering a BSc honors program with jointly with a private company, but suddenly, due to all these tendering process and all that, we dropped that and we wanted to go on our own. So soon we will going to make the announcement of BSc honors for online program for some of the key areas of data science and other areas. We would like to experiment that with large number of students, not just like what IITs used to use, to do that. Building resilient universities for tomorrow. And I actually wanted to talk to you on this at length, but now most of that thing, or whatever I wanted to say, I cover actually. Given you a glimpse of it, and many of you are also part of our system because you are, I think all of you have visited IIT Guwahati because we are very close town to you. What I would like to say is the world-class university is basically in our perception. What we do there is able to attract the most academically able students, the most highly qualified professors and researchers who can think and contribute to the society at large through their research, innovation, and entrepreneurship and startups and whatever. Next slide, please. So our mantra at IIT Guwahati is the innovation, incubation, and translation for growth. So I would confidently say that Indian Institute of Technologies, which were an engineering colleges basically in 1980s and 90s, were very focused in teaching an undergraduate program. Okay, today they are institutes of Indian technologies. They are going to actually contributing in a large way, lot of technology transfers, lot of large unicorn company creators of the world. Some of those contributions are actually turning into decacorns also. That means they are the economic engines of a nation. And if you look at today, the largest companies are all headed by majority of the IIT alumni, like Microsoft or any of those, Google for that matter. So even in IIT Guwahati, we started looking at industrial research, fundamental research, infrastructure, contribution to society, academics, and we have gone from just a basic engineering program to a multidisciplinary education. As I told you, School of Business, next slide will tell you. Our vision is to be recognized globally for excellence in education, research and innovation, and nurture future leaders to serve the society at large. Next slide, please. As I told you earlier, I will only highlight one of these things. IIT Guwahati can be considered as a role model that represents successfully implementation of vocational education policy. And also, it brought the confidence of the Indian academicians that one institute or university can become a frontline institute all by itself at a location that was not well connected by air with the rest of the country when it was started in 94, just like yours. Okay, so this is really, today recent actually placement. If you look at it, the distance and the location is no matter because the highest paid package was given to an IIT graduate student almost like 2 crores plus, which was unimaginable at the early days. The placement, the companies never even visit us. But today our placement is more than 90-95%. I mean, placement is leave placement. Our focus is still first stage. Just like when I was an undergraduate student, we never heard about placements. There was no concept at all. Today, every institute, even in engineering, small engineering, private engineering college talks about placements. But today, our goals are completely changed. We talk about now entrepreneurship, startups, and new companies. So our research park has already hosted more than 22 companies in the pandemic year. And our building is not yet ready. Our building will be ready maybe in another 2 months. Research park building funded by the Ministry of Education. Okay? So that clearly tells that there is a lot of activities going on. Today, IIT Guwahati with an academically vibrant campus becomes the destination of leading academic minds from all over the world. Next slide, please. As I told you, the 5 interdisciplinary academic schools, agro technology, energy, science and engineering, data science and artificial intelligence, health science and technology, and school of business all started in the last 2 years. And intelligent cyber physical systems, Center for Sustainable Polymers, Center for Disaster Management and Research are also started in the last 3 years. And our outreach program of the EICT Academy started in 2016 has grown by leaps and bounds. We have actually tried more than 25,000 engineering students and practitioners in several very high-end areas like cybersecurity, data science, and other areas. And our number of sponsored research projects also grows leaps and bounds. Number of consultancy projects are also, we are not only doing consulting only in the Northeast, we are now doing a lot of projects both in Delhi, National Capital, and many other places as well. Our faculty. Next please. The ranking I will not repeat. Next please. This is the NIRF Nature Index. It's not just in one ranking index, in all the rankings we are there. Next please. Well, this is one thing better to mention because we talked about sustainability. The world ranking has brought the Sustainable Development Goal ranking very recently, and where IITG has been ranked in SDG 4, quality of education, SDG 7, affordable and clean energy, SDG 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure. And we are top 400 globally in SDG 6 and SDG 10, which is clean water and sanitation and reduced inequalities. And I would also very happy to say and share with you that in our SDG course, what we have offered was appreciated by the UNEP, and even we had an interaction with the UNEP, and they would like to take that course to Africa and other countries as well. The beauty about that is we have close to about 17,000 alumni, and we have 128 plus collaborations with 40 plus other countries. And you can see all those statistics which we try to bring out in one slide. This is the human resources. Next. One other aspect of internationalization we have been more emphasis at IIT Guwahati. Therein we have MOUs with 84 international universities. We are now aiming to sign MOUs with MIT, Harvard, so that not just for the sake of MOUs, we would like to offer joint degree programs. Recent one was the one with St. Andrews University in Scotland, which is a 600-year-old university. We have signed an MOU to start a program, master's program in energy and management through our School of Energy Sciences Engineering, jointly with their business school at Scotland. Next. So we do have a lot of foreign faculty, and I've also introduced the new professor of practice at IIT Guwahati, and every department has an industry advisors actually to bring in the industry academy interaction more meaningful, and also to bring in. We have faculties right now which were accepted to be on our road from USA, Canada, and many other countries. So we do have close to about 83 foreign faculties in the last 1.5 years. So that's a very innovative program what we have created, and where they're doing not only just be on our roles, they are also partly teaching with their colleagues in the different departments and centers and schools. Yeah, next slide, please. So these are the type of academic collaborations for the universities, exchange programs. So first time we have joint degree program with Gifu University, where the director of IIT Guwahati and the president of Gifu University signs in the joint degree. We have done food science and technology and PhD in chemical engineering and mechanical engineering, 3 programs. And the first batch of students have graduated both that side. That means our students are also from India, have also graduated, and from Japan as well. Similar kind of agreements we are trying to do with Australia, US and Canada. So let me stop here. I think I would not like to go further, and if you have any specific questions, I would be very pleased to try to answer and interact with you. So once again, I thank Tezpur University for having me here on your 29th Foundation Day, and I'm happy to see great progress which your university has made in the space of higher education, and we would like to collaborate more and more with Tezpur University and IIT Guwahati. Would like to see more activities and joint collaboration, joint PhD guidance, even if possible the degree possibilities we should explore, so that we can grow together. With that few words, I thank all of you for your patient listening to me. Thank you very much, and I wish a great future for the university. Thank you, Namaste.
Regarding your BTech program, in light of this MEP 2020 and multiple entry mathematics, are you going to have any changes in your education? Going to have any better revisions in your BTech?
Yeah. This will not be through joint entrance exam. Okay, it will not be JEE. What we have talked about, BS honors program, will not be through JEE. Otherwise, it will be another BTech program which we are running. So it will be basically an open through our own entrance exam, through IIT.
That is the BTech program, then will there be any change? Will there be any change or modification?
Definitely, I told you, this will not be what I am proposing a new program, will not be a program like what we get through JEE. See, all IITs have a JEE common entrance. Okay? So JEE advanced. That it will not be like that. It will be a completely new an online course, which is a BS. We will also not call BTech. We call Bachelor of Science.
No, sir.
Honors.
Sir, the question being asked is not about the BSc.
No, we are not going to change that. That will not be changed.
Yeah.
That's what I am trying to say. Our BTech program, we are not going to touch.
Yeah.
That is the aspiration of a large number of people. We can't change that. We don't have that freedom.
My second question,
Yeah.
the companies that you are hosting in your institute, I'm talking about the startups. Are you going to charge from them anything specific, or initially you just let them work and then later on you try to get any kind of profit point of view?
Yeah. It's actually, if you look at our research part, to come in, they have to pay.
They will pay.
They have to pay. There is a fee per month also to get a space in our research part. This is the ministry guidelines of that. It is not free.
This is not free.
22 companies have already come with even the payment. Yeah. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you, sir, for delivering the foundation day mission. Ladies and gentlemen, we now have for you a Hotriya dance to be performed by Ms. Nirikya Deka, an alumni of Tezpur University. Hotriya is a major Indian classical dance. It is a dance drama performance with origins in the Vaishnavite monasteries of Assam and attributed to the scholar and saint Mahapurush Srimanta Shankardev. I request Ms. Deka to give her performance.
हृदयानन्दम् कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरु कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरु हरे राम राम राम
রঙে খেলে দিনা কৃষ্ণ কন্যা
Ms. Decca for the beautiful performance. I would request Giti Moni to give Ms. Decca a token of our love on behalf of the organizing committee. And Pundari Kaksha Das on the guitar and Shubhankar Chakravarti on the tabla. Thank you for the beautiful rendition. Ladies and gentlemen, the university has adopted a policy for rewarding its achievers, on which I request our registrar, Dr. Birendas, to give a brief note.
Esteemed Vice Chancellor Sir, esteemed Chief Guest Professor Sitaram, Madam Sitaram, esteemed teachers of the university, esteemed employees of the university, my dear student friends. As you are aware, since 2008 till 2016, we had a practice of rewarding or awarding Best Teachers Award, Best Research Award, Best Performer Award for non-teaching staff. For some reason, it was discontinued from 2017 onwards. Actually, for the year 2016, it was supposed to be given on the Foundation Day of 2017. But the Board of Management, in its 103rd meeting, decided to introduce the same again, and that's why we have proposed to introduce rewarding our employees, including faculties, for bringing laurels to the university. And since it was discontinued from 2016 onwards, so we will consider all those achievements of our employees, both teaching and non-teaching, our students and research scholars. But because of some technical reason, including pandemics, we could not give away those rewards. Of course, this time we will cover with certificate of appreciation for this period, and from next year onwards, it will be as per the policy, in some cases monetary incentives, in some cases through certificate of appreciation. And for this period, 16 onwards till 2021, we will distribute those certificates of appreciation through the department. So this is my pleasure to inform esteemed members of the university community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. May I now request Professor Vijay Kumar Nath, Chairperson of the Organizing Committee, to give the vote of thanks.
Chief Guest of the Day, Professor T.G. Sitaram, Guest of Honor, Professor Nikal Ajayan, Dr. Tezpur Kambosh, Director DRL Tezpur, and other invited guests. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor V.K. Jain, Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor D.K. Bhattacharya, respected deans, head of the departments and centers, registrar, finance officer, all the faculty members and staff, all administrative officers and staff, and my dear students. We have been fortunate to have Professor T.G. Sitaram, Director IIT Guwahati, and Professor Pulikal Ajayan, Benjamin M. and Gary Mary Greenwood Anderson Professor of Engineering, Rice University amongst us. We sincerely would like to thank them for accepting our invitation. We are grateful that you have spared time from your busy schedule to grace this occasion. We are extremely grateful for your insightful address. I am thankful to our Honorable Vice Chancellor and Pro Vice Chancellor for their advice and support. I earnestly thank our Registrar, Finance Officer, Joint Registrar, and the entire DU administration in general for providing us with all the possible logistic support towards organizing this function. I especially acknowledge the unwavering support received from our estate and DSW offices. On behalf of the organizing committee, we would like to express our genuine thanks to all the former students, retired teaching and non-teaching staffs of Tezpur University who had contributed directly or indirectly to the success of Tezpur University. I would like to place on record my sincere thanks to all my organizing committee members for their wholehearted support, without which this function would not have been possible. I am thankful to all the student volunteers who have greatly helped us in organizing this function. I would like to thank our alumni Ms. Nirekha Deka, our students Mr. Shubhankar, Mr. Sarkar, Tamal Sarkar, and Mr. P. Das for their wonderful performance. Last but not the least, my heartfelt thanks to all who have contributed directly or indirectly to make this function a success. Thank you all. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the formal proceedings of the 29th Foundation Day celebrations of Tezpur University. We thank you for your presence and cooperation in making this occasion a success. Before we disperse, I request you to partake of the refreshments served outside the hall. Thank you once again and wish you all a good day.